Don't get me wrong, Jim Carrey is a great character. I used to be a guy who was experiencing the world, and now I feel like the world and the universe experiencing a guy.
You're sitting across from Jim Carrey. You're laughing. Everyone's laughing. And then, without warning, he becomes you. Your voice, your mannerisms, your very essence captured in a performance so precise, so unnervingly accurate, that you can't help but wonder, does he know me better than I know myself? This is what happens when Jim Carrey decides to impersonate someone. And here's the thing nobody talks about. The person being impersonated, they always break. Every single time. From Hollywood legends to sitting presidents, from Matthew McConaughey to Jack Nicholson himself, nobody, and I mean nobody, can keep it together when Jim Carrey unleashes his supernatural ability to crawl inside another person's identity and wear it like a second skin. Today, we're diving deep into the most jaw-dropping, side-splitting, and downright eerie moments when Jim Carrey didn't just do impressions, he created an entirely new art form that left celebrities questioning their own reality. Ready? Because what you're about to witness will change how you think about comedy forever. The Matthew McConaughey phenomenon. Let's start with the moment that broke the internet, before breaking the internet was even a thing. Matthew McConaughey, the man, the myth, the Lincoln commercial legend. Now, most comedians would just mimic his accent, maybe throw in an all right, and call it a day.
Action, and there's the chick. All right, all right, all right. That's amazing. 3 out of 4.
But Jim Carrey, he went somewhere deeper, somewhere philosophical. When Jim appeared on a talk show channeling Matthew McConaughey, he didn't just sound like him. He became the existential, booger-rolling, Lincoln-driving enigma that McConaughey had somehow made cool. It's real simple, Dave. That's real simple. All I got to do is let go of the illusion that I exist. Drive around on my Lincoln, rolling this booger. Wait, did he just say what we think he said? A booger? But here's where it gets brilliant. Jim didn't just make a joke. He tapped into something we all secretly wondered. What is Matthew McConaughey actually thinking about in those Lincoln commercials? The audience erupted. The host was speechless. And somewhere, Matthew McConaughey himself was probably nodding slowly, whispering, That's actually pretty accurate. But it gets better, much better. Jim's McConaughey impression became so legendary that Lincoln, yes, the actual car company, called him up and said, "We need you to do a commercial, as yourself, doing Matthew McConaughey." Think about that for a second. A major automobile manufacturer looked at Jim Carrey's parody of their spokesperson and said, "This is marketing gold. That's not just an impression, that's cultural penetration at the highest level." In the commercial, Jim sits in a Lincoln, rolling what he calls not even a booger anymore, more of an anchor. He talks to imaginary kids in the back seat. He pontificates about whether God made the moon or the moon made God.
They say God made the moon, but I don't know. Maybe the moon made him.
And through it all, you can't help but ask yourself, is this Jim Carrey doing Matthew McConaughey? Or has Jim discovered the universal truth about all of us? The Jack Nicholson nuclear option. Now, if you want to talk about comedy courage, let's talk about what Jim Carrey did to Jack Nicholson. Most people wouldn't dare impersonate Jack Nicholson. The man is an icon, a legend, someone who's been in the game since before most of us were born. He's got that smile, you know the one, that makes you feel like he knows something you don't. That eyebrow raise that could launch 1,000 memes. But Jim Carrey? He saw Jack Nicholson as a canvas. First, he perfected the impression on talk shows. That sideways grin, the slight head tilt, the way Jack delivers a punchline like he's letting you in on the universe's best-kept secret. Jim nailed it so completely that you could close your eyes and swear Jack himself was in the room. Jack Nicholson, doing a joke. And then Jim would launch into that iconic Jack energy. That chaotic, unpredictable, slightly unhinged, but somehow totally in control presence that only Nicholson possesses. The audience went wild every single time. But that wasn't enough for Jim Carrey. No, that would be too easy. He needed to do the impression in front of Jack Nicholson. Let me repeat that. Jim Carrey decided the best possible use of his talent was to impersonate Jack Nicholson while Jack Nicholson watched, at the same event, in the same room, probably making direct eye contact. And of course my favorite Jack Nicholson. I can't believe I ate the whole thing.
And of course my favorite,
Jack Nicholson.
I can't believe I ate the whole thing.
The risk here? Astronomical. Jack Nicholson could have taken offense, could have shut it down with a single look, could have made it the most awkward moment in Hollywood history. What actually happened? Jack Nicholson absolutely lost it. The man was laughing, genuinely entertained, watching someone capture his essence so perfectly that it was like looking in a funhouse mirror that somehow showed the truth.
You are perfect. That, in a way, they're making you a sacred cow. I know how much you like that.
That takes a special kind of talent, but also a special kind of relationship with fear. Jim Carrey doesn't just perform. He walks right up to the edge of what's comfortable and then cannonballs over it. The Robert De Niro gambit. But wait, Jim wasn't done with that event. After destroying Jack Nicholson's composure with surgical precision, he turned his attention to another legend in the room, Robert De Niro. Now, De Niro is known for many things. His incredible range as an actor, his intense method approach, his ability to disappear into roles. But you know what he's not known for? Being someone who laughs easily. This is a man who built a career on intensity, on brooding characters, on being the guy you do not want to mess with. He's Travis Bickle. He's Jake LaMotta. He's every mobster who ever made you nervous just by existing. So what does Jim Carrey do? He goes after him with an impression based on a meatball commercial. A lot of actors started doing bad commercials. Remember Robert De Niro? And then Jim launches into this exaggerated De Niro voice-hawking meatballs. Now that says spicy meatball.
Remember Robert De Niro's?
Now that says spicy meatball.
The audacity, the sheer unfiltered audacity of taking one of cinema's most respected actors and reducing him to a meatball pitchman in front of said actor at a formal event. The result? Robert De Niro laughing hysterically. Not a polite chuckle, not a professional courtesy laugh. Full-on, can't control himself, tears in his eyes laughter. Jim Carrey had broken through the De Niro armor with nothing but a fake meatball commercial and perfect vocal mimicry. And that's when you realize Jim Carrey doesn't just do impressions to get laughs. He does them to create moments of genuine human connection, to make legends remember what it's like to not take themselves so seriously. The presidential takedowns. If you think impersonating Hollywood legends is bold, try impersonating the most powerful people in the world, presidents. Jim Carrey's Joe Biden impression on Saturday Night Live became the stuff of legend. But it wasn't just about getting the voice right or the hair right. It was about capturing that specific Biden energy, the slightly confused urgency, the here's the deal repetition, the way he seems to be in 17 conversations at once. Biden, Mr. Vice President, just 1 second, Chris. And then the physical comedy kicks in.
Mr. Vice President.
Just 1 second, Chris.
The wandering attention, the sudden intensity, the bladder joke that somehow feels both inappropriate and exactly right. I've got the beginning of 46 thoughts now. Let's do this. I'm holding my bladder. Let's get at her.
I've got the beginning of 46 thoughts. Now let's do this. I'm holding my bladder. Let's get at her.
But here's what separates Jim Carrey from every other impressionist. He doesn't punch down. He doesn't make Biden look stupid. He makes Biden look human. Endearingly, frustratingly, hilariously human. And then there's the Trump impression. Now, a lot of comedians have done Trump. It's almost too easy. The hair, the hand gestures, the wrong interruptions. But Jim found a different angle. He focused on the debate dynamics, the constant interruptions, the refusal to engage with actual questions. No, it's not. Excuse me, please. No. Whatever you're going to say. No.
Here's the deal.
No, it's not.
Excuse me, please.
No, whatever you're going to say, no.
The genius here is that Jim captures both sides of the debate chaos. He's Biden trying to make a point. He's Trump interrupting. He's the moderator losing control. He's the entire three-ring circus compressed into one hyperkinetic performance. And when Biden finally snaps with, "Will you just shut up?" you can feel the exhausted exasperation of everyone who sat through those debates. This isn't just impersonation. This is political commentary, filtered through physical comedy, filtered through sheer talent. It's layers upon layers of performance, all happening simultaneously. The Conan O'Brien chaos. When Conan O'Brien challenged Jim Carrey to do impressions, he thought he knew what he was getting into. After all, Conan's a comedian himself. He's seen it all. He's interviewed everyone. He was not prepared. Jim launched into an impression that seemed to have no beginning and no end. His face contorted into shapes that shouldn't be physically possible. His body moved with the fluid insanity of a cartoon character made flesh. Conan started laughing. Then he started joining in. Then he completely lost control. The beautiful thing about this moment is watching two comedy masters feed off each other's energy. Conan wasn't just interviewing Jim. He was getting swept up in the performance, becoming part of it, surrendering to the chaos. And that's the Jim Carrey effect. He doesn't perform at you. He performs with you. He invites you into the madness and dares you to keep up. By the end of the segment, Conan was making faces right alongside Jim, completely abandoning any pretense of being the host. Jim Carrey had successfully broken down the fourth wall, the interview format, and Conan's professional composure all at the same time. The metal music revelation. Here's where Jim Carrey reveals he's not just an impressionist. He's a method actor who can impersonate entire genres of music. When a talk show host asked about his music preferences, Jim could have given a normal answer. Yeah, I like rock, some jazz, maybe classical. Instead, he decided to become thrash metal personified.
Do you feel like singing?
Yeah, I'd love to sing.
I've really started to get into this thrash metal music. I don't know, there's something about it, man, that I just can't let go. And then he proceeded to perfectly capture the vocal stylings of death metal, the guttural screams, the incomprehensible lyrics, the sheer aggressive energy that makes your grandmother worry about your soul. The audience was simultaneously horrified and delighted, because Jim wasn't making fun of metal music. He was celebrating it by inhabiting it completely. He mentioned Napalm Death, a legitimate grindcore band, and then delivered this observation. I listened to this album and it was literally, I'm not exaggerating, guttural screaming. But then, and this is where Jim's genius shines, he immediately pivoted to imagining the metal vocalist doing soft duets, singing You Don't Bring Me Flowers in that same death metal voice. More guttural screaming. It's absurdist comedy at its finest. It's musical knowledge combined with physical performance combined with perfect timing. Most comedians would get one laugh out of metal music is loud. Jim Carrey built an entire 4-minute bit that kept building and building. The Lance Armstrong moment. When Jim Carrey decided to impersonate Lance Armstrong, he didn't go for the obvious angle. He didn't talk about cycling. He didn't reference the controversies. Instead, he created this bizarrely specific character study that somehow felt more true than a straightforward impression. People say I look like Lance Armstrong, especially when I do this. And then Jim adopted this intense, aerodynamic facial expression.
A lot of people say I look like Lance Armstrong, especially when I do this.
The kind of look someone gets when they're pushing through mile 50 of a brutal race. But he added this perfect detail. See, around mile 50 is where I break away from the pack by just passing wind. It's juvenile. It's stupid. It's absolutely hilarious. Because Jim found the human element in superhuman athletic achievement. He made Lance Armstrong relatable by making him flatulent. This is Jim's superpower, finding the absurd detail that makes everything click into place. Most impressionists focus on how someone talks. Jim focuses on how they exist. The Oscar trolling incident. Now we arrive at perhaps Jim Carrey's most audacious performance. The time he showed up at the Oscars and absolutely trolled everyone. Remember, Jim Carrey has never won an Oscar. Despite being one of the biggest movie stars of the 90s, despite his incredible dramatic turn in Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, despite everything he's accomplished, no Oscar. So when he was invited to present the award for film editing, he decided to address this elephant in the room. But not with bitterness, with comedy so sharp it could cut glass. I'm here tonight to present the Academy Award for Outstanding Achievement in Film Editing. That's all I'm here to do. Pause. I can just show up and enjoy the parties.
I'm here tonight to present the Academy Award for Outstanding Achievement in Film Editing. That's all I'm here to do.
And then he pretended to break down, mock crying into his hands before delivering this perfect line. Winning the Oscar is not the most important thing in the world. It's an honor just to be, oh God.
Winning the Oscar is not the most important thing in the world. It's an honor just to be Oh, God.
The audience didn't know whether to laugh or console him. Jim was playing with their emotions in real time, creating this perfect blend of genuine vulnerability and obvious performance. I would have thought that voting for myself was going to make the difference, you know, but you really got to get out there and talk to people.
I would have thought that voting for myself was going to make the difference, you know, but you really got to get out there and talk to people.
And then the coup de grace. Anyway, who cares? I have been beaten by Roberto Benigni. He has jumped into my ocean.
Anyway, who cares? I have been beaten by Roberto Benigni. He has jumped into my ocean.
The reference to Benigni's famous Oscar acceptance speech, where he literally jumped over seats, was so specific, so perfectly timed, that the entire room erupted. Jim had taken his own Oscar snub and turned it into performance art. This wasn't just an impression. This was meta-comedy. This was Jim Carrey impersonating the version of himself that cared about awards, while simultaneously showing everyone that he was above it all. The Don Rickles tribute. When Jim Carrey channeled Don Rickles, the legendary insult comic who could destroy your ego and make you love him for it, he didn't just mimic the voice. He captured that specific Catskills energy, that rapid-fire delivery, that ability to offend everyone equally while somehow making it endearing. Thank you, my darling, for that wonderful introduction. I'll wait for the call anyway.
Don Rickles.
Thank you, my darling, for that wonderful introduction. I'll wait in the car.
And then Jim launched into vintage Rickles-style insults, targeting everyone from Arabs to Israelis with that old-school, politically incorrect comedy that Rickles made famous. It's a good thing you cut it off, though, because the Arab was going to make a bid. By the way, Habib, your wife called. The slurping machine is broke.
By the way, Habib, your wife called. The slurping machine is broke.
Now here's the thing about this impression. In modern times, this comedy style is controversial at best, but Jim wasn't endorsing it or condemning it. He was preserving a piece of comedy history by showing exactly how Rickles worked. The rhythm, the fearlessness, the weird affection underneath the insults. By the end of the bit, Jim delivered Rickles' famous catchphrase, "Now that's comedy." And it absolutely was. The Canadian origin story. Before Jim Carrey became the impression master we know today, he was a stand-up comedian dealing with a very specific problem, being from Canada. I used to get really upset when I told people where I came from down in Los Angeles because I always got the same response. Canada. Wow, must have been cold.
I'm down in Los Angeles because I always got the same response. Canada? Wow, must have been cold.
Most comedians would get maybe one or two jokes out of this. Jim Carrey built an entire mythological narrative. Yes, Canada. It was a frozen hostile wasteland, and there was much work to be done if we were to survive the elements.
And there was much work to be done if we were to survive the elements.
And then he painted this absurd picture of Canadian life. Boring holes through ice, building igloos.
After boring a hole through the ice, would build an igloo.
Protecting themselves from polar bears and flying hockey pucks, with his friend Nanook.
Protect ourselves from polar bears and flying hockey pucks. Nantucket and I.
The genius here is that Jim took a throwaway observation, people thinking Canada is just cold, and elevated it to epic proportions. He didn't just tell a joke, he created a world, a frozen, ridiculous, perfect world. This early material shows that Jim's talent for impressions came from a deeper place, his ability to take a kernel of truth and expand it into something larger than life. Whether he's impersonating a person or an entire country, the principle is the same. The Ventriloquism masterclass. Just when you think you've seen all of Jim Carrey's talents, he pulls out ventriloquism, because of course he does. His Pee Wee Herman impression, complete with dummy, showcased not just vocal mimicry, but actual ventriloquism skills. He made the Pee Wee dummy talk while barely moving his lips, capturing that high-pitched manic energy that made Pee Wee Herman a cultural phenomenon. Hi, boys and girls. Your friend Pee Wee has been on a new adventure, which is why it's time to buy the new improved Pee Wee. But Jim didn't just do a straight impression. He created a satirical commercial that took shots at the real Pee Wee Herman's legal troubles, the merchandising empire, and the whole concept of celebrity dolls. This one's even anatomically correct. The audience response was immediate: shock, laughter, and appreciation for Jim's willingness to go to uncomfortable places for the sake of comedy. He continued building the bit, adding layers of satire. The new Pee Wee doll comes with Turbo Fest.
The new Pee Wee doll comes with
Pee-wee can beat most anything except a bum rap. And finally, the puppet saying, I have the right to an attorney. I have the right to remain silent. This wasn't just ventriloquism. This was social commentary delivered through a dummy, filtered through an impression, performed by someone who clearly has no off switch when it comes to pushing boundaries. The facial flexibility phenomenon. Here's something most people don't realize about Jim Carrey's impressions. They're not just vocal, they're deeply physical. His face does things that defy human anatomy. When asked about this ability, Jim put it simply, "It's mostly just me." Well, it is. I do all my own stunts. This wasn't him being arrogant. It was him stating a fact. Jim Carrey possesses what doctors call facial hypermobility, an extreme flexibility in his facial muscles that allows him to contort his features in ways most people physically cannot. Watch him cycle through impressions, James Dean, Clint Eastwood, Michael Landon, and you'll notice something incredible. His bone structure seems to change, not just his expression, but the actual shape of his face. When he does James Dean, his face becomes more angular, more intense, more vulnerable somehow. When he switches to Clint Eastwood, everything hardens. The jaw, the eyes, the whole energy shifts from brooding sensitivity to steely determination.
Clint Eastwood.
Clint Eastwood. And suddenly, you're not looking at Jim Carrey anymore. You're looking at the man with no name, squinting into the desert sun, ready to draw. This physical transformability is what separates Jim from every other impressionist. Anyone can learn to mimic a voice. Very few people can actually restructure their face to match someone else's essence. The early years discovery. Let's travel back to Jim Carrey's earliest television appearances, where you can see the raw talent before it was refined, before it became legendary. One of his first major TV spots showed him doing rapid-fire impressions with a kind of manic energy that would later define his entire career. Clint Eastwood, Michael Landon smiling, James Dean. What's remarkable about these early performances is how fully formed his talent already was. This wasn't someone learning his craft. This was someone who had clearly spent years, probably his entire childhood, studying faces, practicing voices, transforming himself. The audience response to these early impressions tells you everything. They weren't just entertained, they were witnessing something special, something they'd never quite seen before. Jim wasn't doing party tricks. He was showing everyone a new possibility for what physical comedy could be. He was breaking down the barrier between impression and transformation. The Prime Minister Trudeau moment. Even political figures from his home country weren't safe from Jim's impression arsenal. When he decided to channel Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, he captured something essential about Trudeau's carefully cultivated image. The impression itself is brief in the footage we have, but even those few seconds show Jim's ability to find the essence of a public figure. In Trudeau's case, that practiced sincerity, that Instagram-ready empathy that sometimes feels just a bit too polished. This is what makes Jim Carrey dangerous, in the best way. He doesn't just impersonate celebrities for laughs. He impersonates them to reveal truth. Every impression is a gentle roast, a loving critique, a way of saying, I see what you're doing, and here's what it actually looks like. The Rocky/Apollo masterpiece. One of Jim's most underrated impressions is his Rocky Balboa and Apollo Creed dynamic, where he plays both characters in a single scene, switching back and forth with such precision that you forget you're watching one person. I know this is your big comeback, and I know I came back from the dead to train you.
Rocky, I know this is your big comeback. And I know I came back from the dead to train you.
But this fight tonight is pure insanity. As Apollo Creed, Jim captures that smooth, educated, exasperated energy of a man trying to talk sense into a human rock. Then he switches to Rocky. No way, Apollo. You just want a human rock, not too many syllables. I got lightheaded there. The joke works on multiple levels. It's funny because it's true to the characters. It's funny because Jim is seamlessly playing both sides of a conversation. And it's funny because he found the perfect detail, Rocky getting lightheaded from using too many syllables, that makes the whole thing click. Look, Rocky, you got the eye of a tiger and the IQ of a lima bean. This isn't just impression work. This is character study. This is Jim Carrey understanding these fictional people so deeply that he can write new scenes for them that feel completely authentic. The legacy. So what have we learned from this deep dive into Jim Carrey's impression mastery? We've learned that an impression isn't just about sounding like someone. It's about capturing their essence, their energy, their entire way of existing in the world. We've learned that true comedy courage means doing your impression directly in front of the person you're impersonating and making them love it. We've learned that Jim Carrey doesn't have an off switch, a filter, or any sense of what's too far. And thank God for that, because his willingness to push boundaries has given us some of the most memorable comedy moments in television history. But most importantly, we've learned that nobody, and I mean nobody, can keep their composure when Jim Carrey decides to become them. Jack Nicholson loses it. Robert De Niro cracks up. Even presidents and prime ministers become material for this man's supernatural talent. Think about what we've witnessed here today. A man who can restructure his face to match someone else's bone structure. A comedian who turned a car commercial parody into an actual car commercial. An impressionist who makes legends laugh at themselves. A performer who can be a ventriloquist, a stand-up comedian, a dramatic actor, and a physical comedy genius all at the same time. Jim Carrey has spent his entire career breaking celebrities with his impressions. But really, he's been doing something deeper. He's been showing us that everyone, no matter how famous, how powerful, how untouchable, is human. And humans are hilarious. When Jim impersonates Matthew McConaughey rolling a booger in a Lincoln,
host Jim Carrey with a spot-on spoof of Matthew McConaughey's now famous Lincoln car ad.
He's not making fun of McConaughey. He's celebrating the weird, wonderful absurdity of existence itself. When he channels Jack Nicholson's manic energy, he's not diminishing a legend. He's adding to the legend's mythology. The question we started with was, why can't anyone keep it together when Jim Carrey does an impression of them? The answer is simple, because Jim Carrey doesn't just mimic you, he reveals you. He shows you yourself from the outside, with all your quirks and mannerisms and unconscious habits exposed. And that recognition, that moment of, oh my God, do I actually do that, is so powerful, so immediate, so undeniable that the only possible response is laughter. Pure, uncontrollable, breaking down your defenses laughter. And in a world that takes itself far too seriously, that's exactly what we need. So here's my question for you. Which Jim Carrey impression broke you? Was it the Matthew McConaughey philosophical booger moment, the Jack Nicholson eyebrow raise, the death metal screaming? Drop a comment below and let me know which impression you think is his absolute best. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the genius of Jim Carrey, hit that subscribe button because we're just getting started. Next time, we're breaking down the moments when Jim Carrey made entire movie sets lose their minds. Trust me, you don't want to miss it. Until then, remember, in a world full of impressionists, there's only one Jim Carrey, and celebrities everywhere should be grateful and terrified.